Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. So my name is Ali Mcgee. I'm the managing partner of Blockchain Founders Fund. And we're honored and privileged to have such an accomplished and senior panel from around the world here with us today. And so we're going to be talking about the perusal of a successful token sale. And we'll first, I'll have a few questions for our panelists after they make some introductions. And then we're going to open it up to each one of you to ask questions as well. So why don't we start just to my right over here with introductions. So,
hello everyone. Do you hear me? Because I don't hear that you. Okay, now you hear me. Good. So I'm Mateusz Zaborski. I'm a communication expert. I'm in this field for more than 15 years now. Previously, before the blockchain era, me and my company helped to begin multinational companies like BMW, Lufthansa, LG, so very major players. And then we shifted our focus to the blockchain world almost 3 years ago. A year ago, I wrote a book about ICO marketing. This is the 6 proven steps to attract ICO investors. And it's a very complex approach that we do for ICOs, STOs, and for startups. Because in my opinion, many of these companies just lack of the right communication. That's why they fail. But we will talk about this more later.
Andrea.
Hi, everybody. My name is Andrea Bonaceto. I'm the founding partner and CEO at Eterna Capital. Eterna Capital is a blockchain investment fund investing in social impact projects, mostly at the infrastructure and protocol layer. I started Eterna Capital alongside with 3 former BlackRock employees. And yeah, happy to be here.
Hi, it's Hamayan Sheikh, Fetch.ai CEO. My background is in machine learning and AI, and we're building a smart ledger which enables the machine learning and AI economy.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Syed. I'm Managing Director of Binary Financial, which is a crypto brokerage company based in Canada, but we've moved to Abu Dhabi recently. I also co-founded the Alphabet Crypto Fund, and my background is in traditional investments. I used to work for Abu Dhabi Investment Authority for 9 years, but I decided to leave to focus on cryptocurrencies and blockchain in general. I've invested a lot in many blockchain startups. I've traded a lot of cryptocurrencies, and I'm advising several projects at the moment as well. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ali bin Yusuf Al-Khamis. I'm a managing director. I'll just keep it very simple. I'm a strategist and executioner. If you want to execute something, just come over, let me know.
All right, well, thank you for the introduction. So as I mentioned, I'm Ali Mcgee, managing partner of Blockchain Founders Fund. It's my 3rd blockchain company. The first was a digital currency exchange, now rebranded to Illuma. And I also run an incubator in the blockchain space. So why don't we get right into it? Feel free, by the way, panelists, to disagree with each other or share your thoughts. And why don't we start with Andrea? So you're the founding partner of Eterna Capital. And how have you seen the landscape change for ICOs and cryptocurrency in 2017 and 2018?
Yeah. Well, I think for sure you see everybody knows that 2017 has been the year of ICOs. You've seen that very strong and exponential growth on projects, sometimes based on promises that they would deliver in the future. And this, during 2018, it very drastically came. I think this model of, let's say, ICO 0.1 came to an end. And now we see the space evolving on the regulatory side as well. And personally, 2 things that I'm looking very closely for 2018 are security tokens. I meet many people, even here, that are setting up security tokens and as well as security tokens exchanges. And the second element is around the blockchain platforms. I do see many blockchain platforms that are trying to overcome the problems of scalability and security. And so I see that being a trend and them competing alongside with the likes of Ethereum, EOS. So I think those are the two main elements we're looking forward. But of course, the space I really hope will mature and the regulation will come into the place, because I think that's the main element that is stopping institutional money to come to the space. And I think if you want the space to develop, that's what we should aim for.
Do we have any other thoughts on?
Well, I'll just add to that. It's not such a bad thing, because I think we're going to see the quality of the projects improve. I think the point you were making about the tokenization, I think what happened in the last year was there was too much focus on just fundraising based on tokens, and people kind of forgot about what the tokens are actually for. And I think that realization is now starting to come in, hence the STO, which is the security token element. But what needs to be remembered is that there are some projects where tokenization is needed for running the platform. And I think we'll see a lot more clarity on that.
No, absolutely. And Andrea, you first mentioned security tokens, which has been a very hot topic. And then Humayun, you kind of stressing on the point of real utility tokens, whether or not they're really needed for the platform. I mean, Syed, do you have any thoughts, as well as maybe on the bearish market as well right now?
Yeah, I think 2017 was easy to make good returns from investing in projects. 2018 is a completely different story. I think there's a lot more being raised privately this year than publicly. And I think there's a lot more quality projects that are coming out, and you actually have to show that you have a product that's needed and that's going to be used, and there's going to be used for the tokens, which is how the price of the token will go up. If there's no value, if there's no use, then there's no demand, so price will go down. But if it's a quality project with a quality product and a team that can execute, then you'll see those doing well.
Absolutely. I mean, maybe let's switch gears a little bit to Humayun, because you actually have a project, and you've been running a pretty successful private sale. Why don't you share some thoughts on how that's been going, as well as maybe what are some of the most important factors in launching a token sale?
Well, I mean, we listened to the previous speakers, and there is a little bit of a realization this year, perhaps, that the economies are changing, and if you're making the economies a lot more digital, you will need a new form of value exchange. So I think tokens are important role to play in that. The issue which we've been facing is there's been so many projects which just raised it against the tokens. What our realization when we were starting to fundraise for Fetch was that if you're looking to get into this new economy, and let's call it, and I think a previous speaker, I think the HSBC speaker was saying, you need predictions, and and there was an AI speaker who said the same. You need predictions in this new digital economy to be kind of bought and sold. So when you're looking at such small transactions and such fast-moving transactions, the fiat currencies are incapable of dealing with it effectively. So you do need something which is more in terms of the tokenization, which applies to the new digital economy. So if you have a true value in that token, then I think it's still a utility token, should still be sold as a utility token. But again, I think the regulator is now trying to get their head around all these issues, and they're trying to work out what is a true utility and what isn't. So I think that clarity would help quite a lot of us. And when we raised the funds, all our investors were a lot savvy. And going to the public, perhaps sometimes they don't understand if it's a utility or a security. So I think the new regulation coming in and more people becoming aware of why we need the tokens would considerably improve this challenge we face now.
Absolutely. So I think you mentioned, token economics, real use case for a utility token. Maybe Ali, do you have any other thoughts on, what are some of the important factors for a successful token sale?
See, one of the things that I really believe in is this whole thing started wrong. People's direction towards building a token without focusing at the solving the solution which they say they will solve. So it's about a promise, right? We all go to an ICO, support that ICO for the factors of the team, the white paper, the tokenomics, but there's several kind of people in the world right now. Some of them are seriously don't have an idea why do we need the blockchain, first of all. Before reaching the idea of, okay, we want to go towards tokenism and making it a fund, an asset class, a currency. So everybody has a thought on how should this be placed. But I really forgot that we've been living in a centralized environment all our lives. So everybody's different towards where he lived and he got raised, and what was the government doing, and how did the government react, and how did the government enhance their lives. See, UAE is an example of a forward-looking country towards 10 years ahead, 20 years ahead, implementation, execution of projects, putting timelines and deadlines. We don't float an idea that we cannot close. Yes, the projects are real, the people are real, the teams are real, but what people do forget, is it required now? Why now? Why isn't it not in another 3 years? Why don't we wait? And I do believe in crowdfunding and the ICO. That's a good idea, but for the right project. The teams sometimes get confused between implementation and execution. And they look at the hot word disruptive as a positive thing for marketing their projects, when I'm against that. You don't need to be disruptive to make it happen. You just need to be enhancing the lifestyle, enhancing the organizations, making them grow, making them live. That is the positive way of looking at things. When you look at a token just for the fact that you want to disrupt it, to take it towards a currency, to take away the fiat and be the way forward, I think we're way, way premature to go towards that. We don't need exactly a currency at the moment. We do need the projects to really conclude and do their work.
I'm not actually sure if I agree or disagree with that statement, because we don't need to disrupt currency. But
Not only currencies,
we do
the
have another
ecosystem.
requirement of a new type of currency which deals with the new type of product which doesn't exist today. So I think I agree with you that we need to find the right use case for it. And I think we already have a right use case, because if you look at the digital data footprint of ours, be it smart cities or our mobile phones,
Yes.
you need a method whereby you can use that data to monetize the data, and it doesn't just sit with the centralized authorities, which means the big corporates like Googles and Amazons of the world. But I do agree with the fact that we don't need to replace the fiat currency, because it has its own use. It came about for physical goods, and I don't think we are in a position, or we shouldn't be replacing it so suddenly. So it doesn't have to be disruptive in that way, but there is definitely a requirement, a need for the new economy which is evolving.
I agree, but the idea is that you enhance it. You don't need to be negative presenter to enhance something. Just enhance it. You don't need it does not specifically stick to the currency side. It started with cryptocurrency. But if you look at the UAE, the first thing that UAE government, I'm not speaking about the free zones, I'm just giving the opinion, my opinion about it. They look at that first thing, recognition. Not implementation of the technology. That has been done a long time ago. They said they're going to implement 22 to 25 blockchain projects in the government. That is done. But you're looking at right now the environment, the people, the social life, the cultures, and plus how young this country is. Everybody forgets that. We're implementing these projects, blockchain. We want to be number one. There is no other way. The only thing is that we are giving you the environment. However, currently, I do believe the environment requires a helping hand. How does the helping hand work? A government requires the support of understanding what we want to do, where we want to go, what do we want to achieve, and what are we bringing to the table. I agree, everybody has thoughts. They're great ideas, amazing. I support every idea that could be executed. Not every promise that could be marketed to people just to generate a hard cap. Yes, right now the ICUs have come down, but it come down in a positive way, where people want to first work in parallel while they raise funds, they do work. There is a parallel roadmap instead of just, I want to do this quarter, and by end of this year you have this, and we will reach this in another 3 years. Yes, people will support that. The support will be there, but you need to showcase it as well. You know, there's a lot of people who miss their dates. There are a lot of people end up with the funding they get, they can't complete the project. There's a lot of tokens that died out as well. The idea here is that not promoting the specific token, promoting the team, promoting the ecosystem, promoting the solution, promoting the execution of it. Because we will have institutions jump in once the government says, you know what, I made a framework here, let these people live in it, let me know how does this work, specifically when it comes to consumer protection. See, in the end, you either work peer-to-peer, where you help the organization to have a sustainable ecosystem in the blockchain, AI, IOTA, all these new things, or whatever would be coming in the next 10 years. However, what we need is now for the government just to give us that space with their framework, work with them once they trust us and learn how an exchanger works, understand how to protect the consumer from scams of ICOs. How do we get the real projects that want to get executed? We cherish that. We want that. We have VCs. We have accelerators here just for you to just plug and play. You will get those chances, but with the right mentality. Let us work hand in hand with the framework of the government. Then they will let us go. Then we can be semi-decentralized, then get into the decentralized side of things. But we need a framework where they will guide us. Now everybody's everywhere. It's very hard for the community to trust a specific entity that will do something, but who's really controlling it? On whose basis? Whose emotions are they? Why do I have to follow this organization for being decentralized? I lived all my life as a UAE national, 47 years, happy with my guidance of the people. Why do I now want to disrupt that? In whatever environment it is, I want to enhance it, yes. I want my people to be number one. That is true. I don't want to take that away, but I want to give them the environment to live, because it's a generation of a lifestyle. We have to look at how we incorporate this whole thing in the lifestyle of the organizational behavior side, the government side, the private sector, and make them understand how we bring value, not by talk, by execution, by what you have guys achieved and what the visions you have going forward, because it won't stop just by one project. Something else will come up. And everybody here is very smart in promoting the token and constructing it. It's not hard. It's just placing it right. Once you place it, it will grow. And UAE is going to be the hub for this. It's going to support this. It's going to go forward with this, but within a framework that would protect the consumer. The consumer is not only the people who will trade or will buy your tokens or will support you for that. The consumer is who's going to live with your product, who's going to have a daily interaction with it. The government who will be utilizing your framework or blockchain or your solutions towards bettering a specific line of business, easing it for businesses, you know, and making it an environment where it helps people not only to achieve a specific economical goal, monetary goal, but as well look at the humanitarian side of it, how things would grow. So the idea is now, I do believe you can raise a lot of money in private sales. Yes, there are people who will support you with the right project, right team, right vision and a leader as well to guide this. You know, the business model needs to work. You will get your fund. I don't think it's hard to raise a fund for a real project. I do not believe that. I believe cash is available, even in this bear market. I am not worried about a company or a specific project on blockchain or whatever they want to do to get a fund. I do not believe the fund is not there. I believe the structure of the project and the placement of it is not really fit. They want to come here. Everybody wants to be the UAE first startup in whatever blockchain project it is, right? But why are you placing it in the wrong direction? You know, you want to go do this, but you're doing it from another place, and your team is there, and somebody's working in the States, and I jump to China. It's so confusing. Keep it simple. You need the people's support, and there is a lot of people in the Middle East who want to rally this. They're roaring. They're hungry. The government wants to open that tap, and you will get not only funds, but you will get supporters, you will get enthusiasts, you will get believers, and after that, you'll get a generation who is used to everything. Right now, the government is looking at it as a digital asset, as a commodity, as an asset class. For now, before looking at it, would this be monetized as a currency? Would this be a solution to be a digital solution? Well, okay, why don't they make e-dirham? Just make that a token, right? Use that as a currency, backed by UAE if you want. But what's the purpose really, right?
No, absolutely. And so let's stick on the point that you mentioned earlier with, you know, the government, you know, looking at regulation, creating an infrastructure or some sort of support system to not stifle innovation. Now, there might be a counter argument to that around self-regulation rather than always having the government come in. Do we have any thoughts on that on the panel?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably before real regulation comes in place, it's good to self-regulate yourself, because I think it's extremely dangerous. In the current status, for instance, what I see is that the very good projects, they raise money, but they raise money through private sales or sometimes even equity. You know, going for a public ICO in a context where you're basically trying to claim you're a utility, but pretty much you're fundraising, and the people that are giving you money, they speculate on the value of the token increasing, is a bit, I think, risky. So at the beginning, I think you need to self-regulate yourself to ensure that when regulation comes in, you are compliant and you are perceived as a serious player long term. Because the problem, I think, right now is that being unregulated and being so hyped is like a very dangerous combination, because yes, you attract a lot of interest, but you also attract a lot of projects that they don't really add any value. They don't need a blockchain, and they just try to raise money via ICOs because it's easy. And yeah, that's damaging the ecosystem a lot. So I think as a blockchain fund ourselves, we really welcome good regulation. We hope that comes in as soon as possible so we can operate within a framework which makes sense, and the non-serious players are out, and only the serious ones are into the space, and we can then incrementally build the technology. I also think it's important to understand that you know, blockchain is moving so fast, so it's like you have the internet. You don't have yet, let's say, a protocol for the internet, and there are companies coming up saying, I want to be Airbnb, I want to be Facebook, I want to be Uber, and you're like, okay, like, calm down. Like, first, build a very strong and robust infrastructure. Once you have that, start building on the most relevant infrastructure applications that are actually valuable. Because I feel that 99% of the early stage projects that we see now, they will not exist probably in the next 5 to 10 years. So this is important to bear it in mind. You might have liquidity on the secondary market, and if you enter in the right projects, achieve some returns if you trade it quickly, but you know, it's a long-term play, I feel. Like, as Eterna Capital, for instance, we really try to have a long-term approach, support the projects we believe in, and then with our network ensure that they can grow and they can find synergies with the other portfolio companies. And I think you know, we see more people from the traditional finance industry coming into the space. This gives definitely more legitimacy to the entire ecosystem. And I hope that continues and good regulation comes ASAP.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the earlier point that you mentioned was around self-regulation, and I know myself included, from a fund perspective, we're very big believers in self-regulation, and everyone on this stage should take that stand as well. And when you see something that doesn't make sense, someone that's maybe doing things that they shouldn't be doing, ideally identifying it, putting it out into their network, and trying to help bring this industry to better standards. But you also mentioned on ICOs and people doing it essentially to get money quickly, things like that. I mean, let's call it out how it is. Is ICO markets dead right now? And why don't we move over to Matthias, who is a marketing and communication expert. You've written a book, I think, on the 6 steps to attract ICO investors. Why don't you share your thoughts?
Well, it seems pretty much dead, but just let's get back one step. So I think that currently self-regulation, that should be a pre-process, because self-regulations means to me take responsibility. So most of the ICOs, they just don't take responsibility. They just want to raise money and then run. And it's because most of the projects not giving value. And that's the biggest problem. They're not solving real-world problems. They just want to make money, and that's it. I guess almost everybody in this room here, because we want to make money. That's all right, because we have a common interest. But behind that, there should be value. So the process, what we're doing is probably now we are calling this ICOs or STOs. Probably in 2-3 years, the name will be completely different. I don't know. But this is a good way of fundraising, for sure. And we can say that the market is dead. But my point is that there are still great projects. There are projects who are solving real-world problems and who has a place in this world, who has a future. But the point is, everybody is talking about a bear market, a dead market. But who we are talking about? If we are talking about people who bought Bitcoin at 15K or 20K, of course they don't want to invest at 6K. That's all right. But there are tremendous amount of money. So everybody can raise money when they hit the right audience. We have to hit the right audience. Do you hear me still? Okay. So my approach is what I write in my book. The 6th step is first the story. We have to have a good story because we people remember to the other through stories. Second, strategy. There are not many projects that has a very well-detailed strategy, how to execute. Yesterday, I've seen through the entire ICO Grand Slam. I have to say, and I don't want to bother anybody, but let's say 3 of them was good. All the others, not really. But they can improve if they work more on that. And that's all right. They have to work more on that. Okay, so the 3rd step is the summary. We have to have a hook. We just have 15 to 30 seconds to reach the right audience. Now we have more time. We have more time to discuss many different things, to know each other better. But when we have a project, we have no more than 15 to 30 seconds. If we leverage that, then we can earn more. We can gain more time that we can leverage later. And then the traffic sources, which is the 4th step. We have to have quality, not quantity, but quality. And then we have to start to build a list because we have to build up our own audience. Many people call it as the ecosystem, but that's the audience. We have to know who is our primary, secondary, and so on. Most of the ICOs, they have no real audience because they don't know who to reach and how to do that. And this Sixth step is the most important, and I'm very happy that at this conference, because this is a very quality conference, I have to tell you, I'm traveling all over the world and I'm going to different conferences almost every week, but this is a very good one, and I'm happy to hear from many people that how important is education. That's the sixth step. Because if you don't educate your market, you will fail, for sure. Because the point is, most of the people want to sell immediately. That's not going to work. Because we people, we human beings, we are different. We hate when somebody want to sell something to us, but we love to buy. So that's what we have to leverage. So don't sell, don't start with any sale. Give value, give information, educate your audience, primary, secondary, and so on, and then you will succeed, for sure. If the project really solves a real-world problem for your audience, because probably it's not a project for me, but for you, or for you, or for you.
Which I think kind of ties into the point I was making about the utility side of things. I mean, let's get it right. I mean, ICOs have actually done something really amazing. What has been happening in the US, how the money has been pouring into the technology and how well advanced US is becoming. This is the opportunity for the rest of the world, apart from US, China, and a few others, to participate in this technological growth. Now, exactly what you just said, that if you can convince your audience that there is a true use case and there is a true utility for your project, then fundraising should be fairly straightforward. And again, if they're not just looking at trying to dump and get value out day one, then it's a very good mechanism for supporting startups. They will fail. Startups fail. You know, we have to accept that. I think your point was exactly the same, that yes, we need to have implementation, but you have to also be aware that they will fail. So the best thing we could do, and I think it's all great to say the projects should self-regulate, but what is quite important is your point about educating the people who are participating so that they know what they're actually participating in. And if both sides can do, you know, if the other side can also do their due diligence and find out exactly, I mean, do you believe in it? Then I think the partnership could be a lot more fruitful.
No, absolutely, and I think that, you know, on that point with startups failing, you know, Ernst & Young recently released a report with essentially 90% more or less of ICOs don't have a product yet and would be essentially considered a failure. And I know we were talking a little bit about governance, self-regulation, and Syed, I'm interested in your views, you know, because I know you started your career at the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, and then you founded the digital currency fund of Alphabet. And so I'm curious on your thoughts as an investor around governance and protections when you're seeing and looking at projects and what you're interested in.
I think the governance is still in the early stages. I still think there's a lot more protection for investors that can be done. But as you said, with self-regulating, self-governance, you just have to make sure that you do your own research and you do diligence and, you know, talk to the founders, talk to the people behind the project, dig deeper into it. Have they actually considered the legal aspects of what they're doing? Does it work in their jurisdiction? You know, there's a lot of material out there to read on projects. So, yeah, you just do your own homework, rely on yourself, and you should be fine. But on a market-wide scale, I don't see that there's a lot of governance out there, and I think the SEC and different regulators are trying to monitor and control the market. But there's so many projects out there that it's very difficult for them to keep a track of, you know, what's actually not a scam and what's actually going to deliver on what they're saying. So there's a lot of different things. There's a lot of projects and there's a lot of work for the regulators to, you know, try and protect the investors. So ultimately, I think you just look within and do your own work, and you should get a good hit rate from your investments.
No, absolutely. And I think making sure that that due diligence is very sound, even for public investors, being able to use something like Ask Me Anythings and ask questions and really press down on things. I mean, I'll share some thoughts from our fund perspective on what we're doing. So because we do very early stage investments, we actually generally try to impose things like longer lockups on founders and actually making sure that there is also lockups on investors. Because if there isn't, we're finding that too much of the token supply is actually hitting the market, which puts downward pressure on the project. One of the other things that we're also looking at as a transformation is essentially tranches in funding. Rather than someone fundraising 20 million, 30 million up front, actually having them do it in tranches once they've hit milestones. And Vitalik Buterin also proposed something called DICOs, so Decentralized Autonomous ICOs, which if you're not familiar with it, it's essentially a smart contract that you'd be able to put or invest into, and based on milestones and the community being happy with it, that funds or those funds would be released to those projects. And so there's various ways that this can be done, but we're starting to see that hit the market. I mean, do we have any thoughts on DICOs or other investment protections?
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, in my opinion, I'm, as I mentioned earlier, very skeptical about projects right now approaching a public sale and claiming to be a utility token, because, yeah, it's a claim they can make, but then we'll have to see on the regulatory standpoint where we will be. What I see is that very good projects, they do not have any issues right now in raising money. They either go for equity or private sales. I give you an example, like one project we invested in recently. It's called Algorand. It's a blockchain platform. The founder is an MIT professor who won the Turing Award 2012, which is the equivalent of the Nobel Prize for computing science. These guys, they don't need an ICO to raise money. Like, you know, they are doing that, working on this before there was this hype around the decentralized technologies, etc. So they want to get the safest funding mechanism to then move on to the next stage. I think a situation where companies, they go for public ICOs right now is a situation where they're probably struggling to raise money, and they find the ICO as a possible way to raise from as many people as they can. But I'm not sure right now is the right condition to sell to retail investors, because you are selling to retail investors something that at some point might be considered a security. And then you have the problem of discrepancies or regulations among different countries. So I have to be honest, like from our side, we try to be as careful as possible. And you know, we never invested in a public ICO. We tend to come, yeah, as I said, like private sales where other big funds are investing as well, or in the equity itself of the company. And what we see good projects do, if they want to incentivize the community, they might do an airdrop. Basically, they gift tokens to the community. They say, okay, the community is very supportive. They helped us out from the very beginning. We give them free tokens. Like, we don't want them to buy them. And that's very successful to incentivize people. And sometimes the value of the airdrop, because the project is very high profile, start being quite significant.
Absolutely. I mean,
I have a point about airdrop. Most of the ICOs who want to attract institutional money, they fail to do that when they do an airdrop on a bad way. Because if they do an airdrop, which seems that they are just printing money, which is not good, then it's not good. Because when it's covered as a marketing cost, then it's completely different. It should be a cost when you give free tokens. Otherwise, it's just giving value for nothing. And they are building a very wrong ecosystem, because they're just airdrop hunters and people with no value going there.
No, but I mean, normally it's not a situation where, you know, you go, you register on the Telegram group a month before the ICO and you get an airdrop. It's normally something for the very early supporters of the project. It's already agreed with the investors, so the investors, they do know, you know, that there's going to be an airdrop. And actually,
that's a different conversation.
Yeah, exactly. If you take the projects that, you know, I'm talking about, they have some of the main investors in the space involved, and then they do an airdrop, which is definitely safer compared to do a small public ICO under the current market conditions, because you're gifting tokens. You're not asking a retail investor that probably doesn't know anything around the project, but he just sees that, oh my God, on crypto, I can make so much money, so let's buy it. And then, maybe it doesn't go as expected, start losing money. You don't want that risk on a project that anyway doesn't have any problems in terms of fundraising. But I agree with you that it should not be seen as a way of printing money. Should be make it clear from the very beginning, and should just be something to reward the community that is involved from the very beginning, just because they cannot access the ICO because there is no ICO.
Well, my problem with all of this is, what we're trying to do is take a funding model and we're trying to fit it into tokenization. I just don't, I think taking your point, I just don't see why we're doing it, because if we're saying it's not a utility token, and we're saying we don't want to list and make it liquid, then what is the purpose of doing this tokenized-based funding? I mean, I don't see the point in it, because you could just go exactly the same way as we've always done, go to the private investors and fundraise. Why tokenize? So my problem is quite fundamental. If that is the only reason of tokenization, then it's the wrong reason. Then you might as well just do private funding and equity-based funding, because it's no different. The only reason why the tokens, I feel, as a project, I feel, and this is not obviously, this is a personal opinion, is when you have some purpose for the token. If you don't have a purpose for the token, let's go back to the previous model. And the purpose for the token is to build the community around it. So even when you talk about airdrops or any of that kind of method, the whole idea is that the true value of an airdrop is, how do you engage the community building? If you can't engage the community building and you're just dropping tokens for marketing purpose, then it's probably not the right thing, and we're going to fall down again on that basis.
So I think this is a really interesting discussion on airdrops, but I want to make sure that we have enough time for questions. And so let's open it up for questions now. If you do have questions, we'll have the team over here on the left that'll be able to bring over a mic. Do we have any questions?
That's a good
Come on, don't be shy.
Don't be shy, guys. Don't be shy.
You can ask anything.
Go ahead. Shoot. I guess we scared them.
Hi, I have a question with around security tokens. Like everybody is moving to security tokens now, but do you think the market is like the exchanges are ready for it? Because the exchanges we have been talking to, everybody is saying, oh yeah, we want to do security token, but nobody's ready yet.
I think.
And what kind of regulation you need to do for it to be available for everybody?
I think just like ICOs were hyped up last year, I think this year there's a lot of talk around security tokens. There's a lot of buzz around it, but I think it's still very early. The ecosystem and the infrastructure is still not there yet. There's still going to be a lot of liquidity issues. How are you going to get liquidity to those security tokens? There's a lot of startups that are coming out, like exchanges, security token issuance platforms. It's coming, but it's going to take I think it's going to take longer than people expect it to. But I think it's a very much needed in the space at the moment. Like with these ICOs raising so much money and then not delivering, you want accountability. So if you have some equity or a share of the revenue through the security tokens, then those projects will actually, want to deliver, and they'll have to deliver. So, but I think it's still very early, and there's still a lot of work to be done, but we'll get there. But it's the right thing, and I think it's very good for the market to have this STO phenomena coming up here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add on to what Syed said. So I'm an advisor on a project called Polymath, which is generally considered one of the top, companies in the security token space. And I do agree. I think it is early. We still don't really have exchanges with liquidity. I mean, there's still also the problem of a lot of security tokens having very large valuations, which does not correlate with if it was a typical equity raise and it's an equity security token. So we're seeing some differences, but we do see a lot of value, right? There is value in the longer run around having, essentially fractional ownership or abilities to purchase, smaller amounts of equity. And one of the big benefits of security tokens that sometimes people don't realize is when you're doing traditional fundraising and you want to fundraise out of, say, a number of different jurisdictions, you need to go have lawyers in each of those jurisdictions, follow, each of those sets of legal kind of rules. What you can do under an STO is you can program in, say, 90% of those rules into the token, and it can actually dramatically reduce your legal costs, and now you're only spending maybe 5,000 or 10,000 to actually make sure you're covering everything under those countries. And so it helps to provide a much more scalable way to even fundraise under security tokens. Do we have another question?
Yeah, I have another question. Syed, this question's for you. I know you see a lot of institutional order flow at Binary, and I'm just wondering what piece of fundamental news, whether it's the fidelity things or the backed things, what makes you most bullish from the institutional perspective?
I think
why has the market not been reacting bullishly to any of these positive newses?
I think we're pretty much. I believe personally that we're at the bottom of the market right now. Confidence is very low. Projects that are trying to raise publicly are struggling. So I think it just needs one of the big institutional players to actually put the money in. And also, obviously, any news relating to regulation is going to affect the price. It's still a very speculative market. But I see if one of the big institutional players comes out and makes a public positive statement, then that will reflect on the market. And I think it just needs the big whales as such to start buying in, and then the crowd will follow, and you'll see the market recover.
Perfect. I think we have time for just one more question. I know there's a few hands over here. Let's actually go. Yeah, sure, right here.
Hello, Ali. You were mentioning about DICOs. So you can have DICOs or governance-based systems, basically, and basically what can happen is that the community will take over the control of the project. So how do you see that happening in a good way? Because the community can make a decision which is actually not in favor of the project going forward.
Yeah, so I mean, it's early days for DICOs, but I think one of the benefits could be that if the project is not hitting the milestones and the community is aligned, which is your group of investors are aligned, that it's not following that, there's different mechanisms. So one, they could take over the project. Two, you could have no future funding go to that project and it gets returned to investors, and potentially that makes the project shut down. There are obviously cases where it could be manipulated. I mean, we've seen with a lot of consensus models or ways, for example, EOS, you're starting to see, breakdowns in actual, integrity of, say, such nodes. You could essentially have that with larger investors trying to push their weight potentially with a DICO. So there are challenges to it, but I think it's early days. But I do think it is a mechanism that helps to increase investor protections, and we're still trying to figure out what the best ways are. I mean, in the VC world, you've got tranche fundraising, right? And so you need to hit milestones to be able to get additional funding. So that is another way that we could go, but there needs to be better ways, I think, in terms of protecting investors. Any other thoughts?
I think every project can leverage that they are listening to their audience, and that can happen changes if they listen, and that could be good. But I think most of the projects they just have never reached this point.
Perfect. So I know there was a few more questions. Unfortunately, we don't have time, but we will be around afterwards, so feel free to come by. But before we end this panel, I have one final thing. I'd like each of our panelists to share one final piece of advice that they'd like the audience to take away from this panel or conference. And why don't we start with Ali?
One of the main things I'm a believer of is education. Learn, educate yourself, self-learn. It's not hard. Pick people's brains. Pick their brains. Learn from them. They've been there, they've been down, they've been beaten up to reach where they are, to understand where the market is. It doesn't matter if it's not about, oh, I need to pay a specific organization to get advice. Trust me, it is worth it. They give you the right guidance. They might let you understand how to live in a specific environment. It's not, you're paying for knowledge. You're paying for guidance. So don't just go in because you have an amazing project. Understand how you want to place it and execute it. There has to be an end for that cycle. When that cycle ends and it's executed and implemented, then you're going to be there to scale that. And you understand which side of the world would it work in. You know, yes, you are self-regulated, but as well you need to be acceptable by the audience. Who's your audience? Who are the people? So learn the market. Learn where you want to live. Is it in the UAE? Is it in the Middle East? Is it first live in that framework so you can expand. You can't be everywhere. I want to be in Malta, but I'm going to be starting up in Dubai. So learn from people first. Understand how to place it. Invest in the team to grow, to have a direction. Your vision is perfect. Your mission is perfect. Your tokenism is amazing, but place it right. You know, you get the money, but put it right so it works.
I think for me, the most important thing is information. Make the most that you can out of all the information that's available out there. Do your own homework, do your own research, talk to people, ask for opinions, different views. Don't just stick with your own view. Be prepared to change your opinions on projects because the market's changing all the time, so just keep up to date and just read as much as you can and get as much information as you can before making an investment decision.
I think tokenization is good if done rightly, and I think reiterating, let's do your homework from both sides, the company side and an investor side. That's it.
Yeah, from my side is I think we should give time for the space to mature, so we should all be aware of that. Like try to stay away from get-rich-fast schemes, try to stress test as much as you can, and at the same time understand that blockchain can change many industries. It's a very revolutionary technology, but we need to just approach it in a very serious way, step by step. So that's my main advice.
I would say education. Completely agree with you. That's the most important. Spend more time to educate yourself. If you have projects, spend more time to educate your audience. And probably if you are a project leader, spend more time to develop yourself. Because if you learn how to educate people, that's the biggest thing that you can leverage. And that's the biggest thing. Through that is the easiest way to give value.
Yeah, and finally, if you're on the investment side, do your due diligence. Make sure you understand what you're getting into. Understand the token economics if it's a utility token, because a company could be successful and the token might not be. But if you're on the project side right now, the market is pretty dead in my opinion, and so focus on development and like real partnerships drive real value, and as the market starts to pick up, there will be a lot more value coming your way. So thank you everyone for listening, and thank you to our panelists for taking the time out of your busy schedule. So please give them a round of applause.
Thanks.
Sign up for a photo.